So Paraguay just changed the rules on getting permanent residency. And if you're one of those guys who's been watching content about Paraguay and thinking about getting residency someday, this is why I always say it's better to get this stuff done sooner rather than later. Now, I started my Paraguay residency journey back in 2025 last year. Ended up with temporary residency. I got my cedula, I opened up a bank account, but I still don't have permanent residency just yet. I'm not eligible until next year, actually. And because of this new change, which recently happened, this impacts me directly right now. And now I have to adjust my plan based on the new rules. And had I just got this stuff done back in 2024 when I first came to Paraguay, I probably wouldn't be dealing with any of this right now, but it is what it is. So in this video, I'm gonna break down what changed specifically with Paraguay's rules, how this affects you if you're serious about getting Paraguay residency here, and what my plan is moving forward as an American, someone who already has temporary residency, but still hasn't gotten the permanent residency just yet, so that you also know what to do moving forward. By the way, if you're new here, my name's Alex. I left the US back in 2022. Now I live in South America full-time through earning online income, and I help other men do the same. So let's dive into the video. Welcome back to the channel, guys. As you can see, I have a different background behind me. I am not in Paraguay at the moment. I actually I'm visiting Santa Cruz, Bolivia, which has been going very well. So I plan on doing videos on that soon. But let's dive into the topic of this video. So Paraguay permanent residency, here's what I'm gonna cover. I'm gonna go over why I think this happened. Why not just stick with temporary residency as well, right? That's one of the questions I've seen. If you can just renew temporary residency, why even bother with permanent? What actually changed specifically? And then what is my plan, which after speaking to my residency specialist, really there's 12 options in total, but 2 options that I would seriously consider for myself. All right, so let's dive in. All right, so why did this change happen? All right, this is just my opinion, of course. It doesn't really matter, but I figured I'd go into it. So the bigger picture, I mean, residency applications have been growing every single year in Paraguay. I don't know the exact number, but it's just been increasing every year, right? A lot of Argentinians, a ton of Brazilians, more and more people from Europe and even from the US are starting to apply for residencies as well. So in my opinion, this is just another change that Paraguay has made in order to control the number of people living inside the country. They just want to make it a little more difficult. They want to basically weed out people who are not that serious and creating more additional hoops for those who don't see themselves long-term here. That's just my opinion, all right? So who does this affect specifically? This affects those who already have temporary residency, like myself. I'm someone who got temporary residency sometime mid last year. So I'm eligible next year to get permanent residency. So this affects me right now, unfortunately. And of course, this affects you as well. If you don't have temporary residency yet, I mean, the good news is that they didn't change anything with that so far. So this just affects people who already got the temporary residency. So in my opinion, if you're someone who still hasn't started the process yet, your only job right now, if you're serious about Paraguay and setting up an international backup plan and getting residency or cedula in a different country, your job is to get temporary residency as fast as possible before they start making changes to that process as well. All right, if you guys need help with that, check out my other videos. I did an entire video on how I got Paraguay residency in just one trip. You can get my checklist, you can work with my specialist, but this doesn't affect you right now. It will down the road. But the good news for you guys is they haven't made any changes to the temporary residency just yet. So I would just get started on that ASAP. All right, so here's a question that has come up. Why not just stay on temporary residency, which is a valid thing. I think a lot of people like in Southeast Asia, if they live in Thailand or Philippines, a lot of times they just renew their visa like every year, every 2 years, however often it is. And they're able to live there long-term that way. So why not just do that here, right, in this scenario? Because it seems simple, it seems easier to do. But here's why I think permanent residency is definitely the smarter move long-term. If this isn't obvious already, like I'll make it obvious right now. So number one is the time savings. All right, so temporary residency must be renewed every 2 years. All right, and if you haven't gone through the residency process yet, you'll see that it's gonna take, sometimes it takes multiple trips. Like in my video, I showed you how I did it in one trip, but a lot of people, it takes several trips. It takes several months to even get approved as well. So with permanent residency, you only need to renew it every 10 years. It's just that one process you got to do every 10 years instead of every 2 months. I think it's the same amount of time. I haven't done, obviously, the permanent residency process yet, but it's probably going to be the same amount of time, if not less. And if you're someone who values your time, which that's pretty much all of you, right? That's a massive difference in time and headaches. Number 2 is the money savings. You know, renewals cost money as well. So that's going to add up if you have to do it every 2 years versus permanent residency means just paying it once every decade instead of every 2 years, right? So you'll save money on that front as well. And then there's also the amount of travels and trips. I mentioned time savings. Some of you might have to take multiple trips to get it done, depending on your situation, depending on your background, depending on your criminal background history. Getting temporary residency can require multiple trips. Now I mentioned I did it in one trip, but then I had to wait several weeks to get my it took me about 4 weeks to get my card, my residency card, and then another 2 weeks after that to get my cedula, which is actually very fast, right? Compared to some friends that have gone through this process. It takes them months just to get their residency card, and then months later after that just to get their cedula. So who knows how long it'll take for you to get approved if you have to renew this every 2 years. And that process can get annoying, so why deal with it if you don't have to? So if these 3 reasons weren't enough for you as far as time savings, money savings, travel and trips, as far as the hassle aspect, here's the most important reason I think. It's the worst case risk, which is actually very likely to happen, is that they start making temporary residency more difficult, jump through more hoops to get. Let's say they add an additional barrier where you need to earn X amount of dollars, or you need to have X amount in a savings account, and you no longer qualify to renew. Now what do? Right now you have no other option to stay in the country long term. So the real risk is staying temporary, having Paraguay change the rules completely where you're no longer eligible, and now you don't even have the option to renew, right? You'll basically be illegal living in the country once your residency expires. So bottom line, if you're serious about living in Paraguay long term, just go for the permanent residency. It's just the obvious, clear choice in my opinion for those of you who are questioning why even get permanent in the first place. All right, so let's talk about what actually changed. So before, and again, I haven't got permanent residency, so I'm just going by research and talking to my own, residency specialist. But I guess all you needed was a university degree. It was simple. Like if you had a university degree, there were other ways too, but this was my plan. I was just gonna show them my diploma. And I guess this was enough to prove your solvency in the country, right? That's really what they want to see, that you're able to prove some type of solvency and support yourself in the country. So all you needed was that to renew your temporary residency up until 3 months before your residency expires. Very simple, very straightforward, not much of a hassle for that. But now that process is not gone. They want to see more proof in terms of your solvency. So the new rules are going to require more concrete proof to determine your solvency. And there's actually 12 ways that you can qualify, but most people watching this video are probably going to realistically focus on just 2 options. And another thing here is that this rule change is very recent. This happened in the last few weeks. So even residency specialists, even attorneys here, they're still figuring out what specific documents are gonna be required and how everything works. And planning ahead now is definitely something that you'll need to do. So here's my plan as an American, the 2 most realistic options. I'm just gonna keep it super easy, super simple. After speaking with my residency specialist, one of them is gonna be recommended and the other one is gonna be more optional. So let's start with option B, which is basically having a work contract as proof of your income and proof of your solvency. Now I can easily get a letter from my employer to prove this, but the problem is that it needs to be translated and apostilled, which can get a little more complicated and create difficulties. And this is what I meant in the last slide, where you're not exactly sure which documents are required and what they'll actually approve, because this is a brand new process. So it's still unclear what documents are going to be requested, making this a little bit harder to plan for. So because of that uncertainty, this is going to require a little more careful planning, a little more coordination, maybe some patience. And this is not the recommended path that my residency specialist told me, especially if option A is available to you, which it is. So let's go over option A. So option A is simply to get a RUC and file taxes inside the country. This is gonna be the most recommended path. Now, a RUC is simply your tax ID. Think about like an EIN number if you're from the States. And what this looks like is you get your RUC, and this is much easier to get when you're in Paraguay versus when you're outside of Paraguay. You file at 0 for now, and then a few months before your temporary residency, specifically 3 months before, you simply pay taxes for 3 months. And you must declare 2 times the minimum salary, which I actually think this went up like this week as well. So it's no longer $600 a month ballpark. This is just an estimate. So let's just assume, for example purposes, it's $600 a month, right? You pay 10% tax inside Paraguay. So it's going to cost about $60 a month in this example of taxes, so which is going to be a total of roughly $180 over 3 months. And as an example, if your temporary residency expires in August of next year, 2027, then you would simply pay taxes in May, June, and July. And then getting your RUC, as I mentioned, is much easier to do in person. So me being in Bolivia right now, I'm probably gonna do this when I go back to Paraguay, just get the RUC. I still have a lot of months in advance before I'm eligible to get my permanent residency. So I think I'll just handle this once I'm back in Paraguay to keep it simple and convenient. And the reason I don't have a RUC is because it's not necessary for my situation being from the US. But again, if my residency specialist recommends this route, it seems to be the cleanest, smoothest option for me. So that's the path that I'm gonna pursue. All right, and as I mentioned, I'm currently in Bolivia, which is going very well. I'm gonna be creating Santa Cruz, Bolivia videos very soon. After Santa Cruz, I'm here for a certain amount of time. I'll be back in Boston to visit family and friends. And then that's when I plan on actually working on some other stuff out there, which projects I'm not gonna go into in this video. But when I return to Paraguay, that's when I'm going to get my RUC in person and start the process. By the way, this isn't legal advice. This isn't professional advice or expert advice. This is just what I'm doing personally as an American who has temporary residency and is eligible for permanent sometime next year. All right, and that's pretty much it for this video. Short and sweet. I just wanted to give you an overview as far as the changes, as far as what's going to be required, what my plan is now, and just keep it really simple. But like I said, if you guys don't have temporary residency yet, you don't really need to know all this right now. Your main goal right now is to get temporary residency, which itself is a process, right? Before they make changes to temporary residency, I would get that done as soon as possible. And if you guys want to know the steps to get temporary residency, I created a Paraguay residency checklist. Go check that out in the description below. And in that checklist, I also include what bank accounts are easier to open up once you have your cedula. Or for those of you who are more serious and want to speak to a professional, then go ahead and apply to speak with my residency specialist. Link is also in the description. Or if you just want to watch more similar videos to this one, then check out the one I did on how I got Paraguay residency in just one trip. You can find it right here, and I'll see you there.